everyone. Today I'm going to solve paper 1, variant 2, October-November 2019. I'm going to solve question number 1. So let's start as usual. When you receive the paper, you have to write your own name. Then of course your center number and candidate number, and then we move. So this was the last paper before they changed the weights of the marks, and they changed the terminologies. Okay, so let's solve number 1. In number 1, we're talking about GOP. This is a company. It's an oil producer based in country X. It's a public corporation. Remember, public corporation owned by the government. So it's not in a private sector. Okay, remember, I need to know these things before I answer as usual. So they are planning to build a 200-kilometer pipeline across the country using their retained profit to pay for it. So they are planning to use their retained profit, the profit that they keep after paying all the expenses and interest and taxes. So the pipeline will need planning permission. So need to get the planning permission from who? Of course, from the government. So I'm talking about a business that is an oil producer based in country X, let's say in Saudi Arabia, for example. It's a public corporation. It's planning to build a 200-kilometer pipeline using the retained profit, but before they can build this pipeline, they need a permission from the government. Okay, environmental pressure groups are concerned. You know, pressure groups are those who have a similar interest, and they affect businesses and governments, of course. So they are worried about the environment. A spokesperson for GOP said the objectives are different to businesses in the private sector. So GOP's objectives are different to businesses in the private sector. This pipeline will create 2,000 skilled construction jobs. This is a benefit, and reduce the need for the businesses to import oil. So for businesses in Saudi Arabia, let's say, if we're talking about Saudi Arabia, this pipeline will create more jobs, and of course it will reduce the need for other businesses to import oil. This is what GOP's representatives are talking about. Okay, so of course in the exam, as I said, I'll spend like 3 minutes on a context like this, but I understand it before I answer, because one more time, knowing the context is important in my answer. So what is meant by public corporation? 2 marks, 2 knowledge marks. Here I should give a clear understanding about public corporations. They will not reward you if you just say it's a public companies. This is wrong. So you have to simply say a business that is owned and controlled by the state or by the government. Okay, this is how we answer this question. Business that is owned and controlled by the government or by the state. Then in part B, identify, just state them, mention them. Identify 2 economic objectives of countries X government. So we know we have many government economic objectives, right? Remember, we have 4 in chapter 28. So we can say lower unemployment, for example, economic growth. We can say low inflation, improve in the balance of payments. All these are correct. So don't give examples because they won't reward you. Just give the objective itself. So we can say lower unemployment, for example. Okay. Or you can say unemployment. Or you can say, for example, full employment or creating jobs. It's the same. And you can say a low inflation. Of course, other answers are right. Okay. In part C, identify and explain. So identify and explain 2 ways a pressure group might try to influence the actions of GOP. So I know that this business is planning to build a pipeline, 200 kilometers. they're going to use their retained profit. I just imagine the situation that some pressure groups are concerned about the environment, maybe because this pipeline will ruin some, for example, forests, maybe, who knows, or public nature or whatever. So pressure groups are concerned. Maybe it will create also some pollution. I'm just imagining the situation. Okay, and they are asking you here, give me 2 ways in which pressure groups might influence the business. We know that pressure groups are popular nowadays, and they can do a lot of things to influence business or businesses and governments. When I say influence, they force them to change their behavior, or simply they force them to change their decisions. So here I can talk about many things. Pressure groups basically can organize consumer boycotts, can do protests, for example, or petitions. They have a lot of things. They can create negative publicity, for example. So many things. We can say one of them, of course. So let's say a way that pressure group might try to influence would be, for example, let's say create negative publicity. Okay, so create negative publicity is a way. And the explanation, as you know, it's an application. Like I'm saying, a way that pressure group might influence the actions of GOP is by creating negative publicity. Now, you can say, for example, pressure groups, or pressure groups could, for example, publish information, okay, about the pipeline okay, for example, using a newspaper. Okay, I'm just illustrating how to create negative publicity, Remember, this is application. Way 2, for example, it could be sending letters to governments, usually signing petitions, or lobby, we call it lobbying. So sending letters to government. Okay, this is the way they try to influence the actions of GOP. For example, we can say they could sign petitions to prevent, for example, remember, governments grant the planning permission, so we can say they could sign petitions to prevent planning permissions or permission. Okay, so this is part C. In part D now, identify and explain 2 ways in which objectives of GOP might be different if it was in the private sector. So remember, this business is not in the private sector. This business in the public sector, right? So, of course, the objectives of the business in the private sector will be different. Remember, if the business is in the private sector, it will be looking for maximizing profit, and it will be looking for increasing the market share. It will be looking for increasing revenue. All these things are the concerns of a private sector business, but are not the concerns of a public sector business. So here, as if they are asking me, what do you think? Like, tell me, if you are in a private sector, what would you care about? Okay, so I want to explain by using the same format, as I said, application and analysis, and of course, I have to state the knowledge. So here, a way in which objectives might be different, we have many of them. So we can say, or we'll start with the easy ones, let's say. We can say, may look, for example, to increase revenue. Okay, if I'm in a private sector, I may look to increase revenue. So how would I explain? I would tell them that if I'm in a private sector, I would look for increasing revenue from selling oil, and this might be different because in the public sector they may offer subsidized prices or low prices for people to afford, right? So I would say that. So I'll say GOP could increase, let's say, its prices to increase the revenue it makes from selling oil. This is application because I'm talking about oil here. Okay, as I'm analyzing public sector may offer subsidized or low or whatever subsidized prices Okay, this is an answer. Way 2, I can say, for example, may look to maximize profit. Also, in the private sector, if you are in a private sector, you may look for maximizing your profit if you are in a private sector. So I would say a business that will build a new pipeline, of course, will look to maximize its profit out of this pipeline, because in the public sector the objective may be social, or offering services or product for free. So I'm also illustrating this. So I would say a GOP would aim to increase its profit from its pipeline as public sector, as public sector objective may be to offer services or products, of course, oil products, for free or at a low price. So I illustrated my 2 points. Okay, this is for part D. In part E now, do you think that the government should allow GOP to build a pipeline? And here you have to just read the question more than one time. Why? Because I'm saying, do you think that the government should allow GOP to build the pipeline? So I'm talking, if I want to answer this question, my answer should be focused on the impact to the country, not GOP. So the government allows me, it's looking for the benefits that this pipeline, or the drawbacks that this pipeline will bring to the country itself, not to the business itself. So here I have to write an answer that shows two sides as usual, saying what are the benefits if the government allowed GOP to build the pipeline, and what are the drawbacks. Then I give my opinion. So as usual, we have many answers. We know that from the context above, it's easy to get application. Why? Because if you go back, if you still remember, you remember the pipeline, it will create 2,000 skilled jobs. The application is ready and the knowledge is ready here. So clever students will simply understand that yes, the GOP or the pipeline will create jobs, and this is a good thing. So I can understand these things. However, it will create pollution, but I know that pressure groups are concerned. See, the answers are generating now, so I know exactly what I'm going to put on the paper. And I always convince my students, take 3 to 5 seconds, just think about it before you put words on your paper, because it's hard to amend your answer. So here I can say let's say building, remember your answer could be different. So building the pipeline, I'm always forgetting the E in the pipeline. Building the pipeline would create jobs in country X as 2,000, not creating things here, I'm using the context, as 2 jobs are created, which will help, I'm analyzing, which will help to reduce unemployment point. Okay, so this is an answer here. I can use it. I have many answers, but I want to take the 6 marks. I'm not going to write a lot of things. I'm just to illustrate. I just want to illustrate and write, a few things. So here I am saying building a pipeline would create jobs in country X because, as the spokesman said, 2,000 jobs will be created, and this definitely will help to create jobs, or simply it will help to reduce unemployment in country X. So I am okay, and my answer is clear. So I can add one if you want. Why not? Let's add one. Also, I'm also adding a benefit. Let's say roads, or let's say infrastructure would be developed, providing benefit to the whole population. However, here I'm starting to talk about the other part. Okay, for example, I can talk about pollution. I can talk about the using of natural resources. So it's up to me. I can say, however, this pipeline project would use up natural resources as oil will be produced. Remember, this is what I mean, of course. This means that fewer resources will be available for future generations. If you remember, this was called sustainable development. So here we don't have sustainable development. If we are using all the scarce resources, future generations will not have enough oil to use. Okay, as usual, my opinion or my recommendation, I can say I recommend that, and it's up to me. So if you want, you can say yes. If you want, you can say no. But remember, you have to give me a justified decision whether the government should allow GOP to build the pipeline or not. So I can give any reason. Simple one, I recommend that. Remember, I'm talking about a business, so I just recap. I am talking about a business that produces oil, and I can show the benefit that it brings to the country. So here I can say, for example, I recommend that the government should provide, or should allow, or should provide the permission as, and I need to convince the examiner, as producing oil would reduce the need to import it from other countries. Till now I'm okay, and the examiner is saying okay, so I say so a positive, remember this is a balance, or this is a target of any government, a positive balance of payments okay. So let me read my sentence again. So the need to import it from other countries, so a positive balance of payments will be achieved. Point. Okay, I can say no, for example, it causes pollution and there is a concern of pressure groups and might ruin the reputation. It's up to me. Remember, I need to convince the examiner. The examiner knows that everyone has his own opinion. So write your own opinion and you're fine. Okay, so that's all for this paper. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll do more papers.